We can't really discuss contemporary political imagery without acknowledging the enduring influence of a media trailblazer and his remarkable student, Michael Deaver, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, helped create our shared visual memory of Ronald Reagan through the construction of what we now routinely call the photo op. This is Deaver. Quoting Deaver on Reagan, "I've always said the only thing I did is light him well. My job was filling up the space around the head." It's hard not to see the image of Reagan perched at the DMZ in South Korea without thinking of the many imitators that followed. Some of you might remember the Dukakis tank picture that exploded on him. Former White House photographer Dirk Halstead summed it up like this: Reagan was surrounded by professionals who understood how to create a stage on which he could work his magic. There was no contradiction between what you saw as a photographer and the reality, because the photo op was the reality, a movable set constantly on the go around the world. Often on these trips, we saw Nancy, twig-like, bright-eyed, a perfect supporting player, looking up wistfully or off in reverie. For magazine editors and TV producers, these photo ops were both irresistible in their simplicity and agonizing for their dog and pony show quality. In my view, the first sustained pushback against the photo op and Deaver's legacy, and one that signaled a paradigm shift in media coverage of the political process, occurred in 1992 when P.F. Bentley started trailing Bill Clinton for Time magazine. Rather than photograph the campaign from the outside looking in, Bentley proposed to photograph the campaign from the inside out. Michelle Stevenson, then director of photography at Time, explained the rules of engagement to me. We gave PF 3 weeks to follow the Clinton campaign, and at the end of the 3 weeks we would evaluate, and the Clinton people would evaluate. PF didn't show them any pictures before they were published, ever. Amazing, right? The only rule from the Clintons was to stay off Chelsea, and PF couldn't repeat to the magazine what he heard in private meetings. He could give full captions, but not what was discussed. Stevenson said people criticized her at first, but the feeling was that the visual narrative was important and revealing. So 3 weeks turned into 10 months of exclusive access for P.F. Bentley. The result was intoxicating. Every publication clamored for behind the scenes with the Clintons. Since P.F. Bentley's time work, the behind the scenes essay has become standard fare. Bentley went on to build a career around the genre, but over the years, access got tighter, budgets got smaller, and in my opinion, the behind-the-scenes promise of authenticity became another kind of managed stagecraft, less scripted perhaps in Deaver's Reagan, but lacking a sustained spontaneity, leaving the viewer to wonder, is this moment real or staged, and what am I not seeing? One photographer took the closed door and limited access, which was a signature of the Bush presidency, and made it work in his favor, giving us an entirely new way to view an incumbent. Chris Morris was an experienced war photographer, having covered Bosnia, Chechnya, and Afghanistan. In an inspired move, Time named him White House photographer and set him on Bush. Unaccustomed to the droning Washington boredom, Morris challenged himself to find a way to do more than, quote, shoot a man in a suit for 8 years. What he did was turn the camera the other way, on the people watching Bush and watching out for Bush. The series of images called My America charts what Morris called the rise of nationalism, patriotism, and the cult of personality during Bush's campaigns and presidency. It's a picture of a zombie electorate, starstruck in restrained rapture, idealizing a faceless figure, all shot with a neutral focal length, the dominant themes being conformity, uniformity, repetition, the aesthetics of power and control. It's unlikely we will ever again see such studied bodies of work given the new media climate. These days, magazines prefer stylized portraits of politicians. They telegraph a different kind of access and require far less financial and editorial commitment. So perhaps it was inevitable when the media flew into Tampa and Charlotte this summer that the big photo play was not the special access or the story, since there was neither, but the Instagram. Ben Lowey for the New Yorker. So what we have is the post-processed, the mashup, the scary mean. Chris Morris took it one step further, and he turned Tampa into a fashion set for the French magazine L'Officiel, casting his own Romney zombie, as he calls it. Incredible, right? The model was promptly mistaken for a real Romney. Chris told me people thought she was Anne's cousin, and they mobbed her for pictures. So one photographer in no need of a new spin, maybe because his pictures have so effortlessly maneuvered the lines of access and control, is our next speaker, Stephen Crowley. Welcome him.
Hello all, and I have I don't even know how you follow up that, because that is some really terrific work there, and all I can say is I don't have that access. I think I started working in Washington during the last 2 years of Ronald Reagan. I think of the 5 or 6 sitting presidents I've covered, I think I've actually had 3 days where I actually had behind-the-scenes access. So at the New York Times, our little paper, we just try to work with what we have and explore what's around us. And so I just, and ask questions, because if you don't, I have a hard drive with about 2,000 pictures I'll show, so that's a threat. Okay, now, I come from a small village, and I know there's a way to start this, so I hit this Salon, oops, I almost started her show again.
No problem. You are Stephen. Okay.
Any questions yet? How many shooters are in here? Photographers, video shooters?
There you go.
All right, so this was a typical motorcade shot. This was during the Clinton, and when you're in the pool, you've got to keep moving. They're trying to control everything, including your diet, which is why I'm 10 pounds heavier this campaign. And this was this was actually during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. President Clinton did an event at an elementary school, and I stopped in my tracks when I saw no parking and made that picture. So. And this is my first political picture as a young lad with my camera. This was during Watergate, our little black and white TV. So, and this was right after I had asked if I could get in this cross hall to photograph the president as he was walking into his first press conference in the East Room, and I wanted to get him walking by the Lincoln picture, and they said yes, they'll make that happen. Then I walked out, and I was kind of bouncing on because it was behind the scenes access, and as I walked down the street right next to Treasury, I saw this other scene, so it made for a diptych. And when you're the president, this is Air Force One, this is the Beast, as they call it, his limo, and when you're a candidate and you pull up the wrong stairs, this was Carrie Ann Edwards, but this was this was somebody talking about Obama on the left during the McCain campaign, and somebody talking about Kerry on the right. It was policing themselves. So I've been working on a series. Each campaign I do this outside the bus, when I call it off the bus, and I try to do these diptychs. And this was the Kerry bus reflected in a window of gowns, and then right down the street in the rain, I saw this. So. This was one of these gaffes. You know, it was supposed to be a Kennedy-esque moment. They're introducing Edwards as the running mate, and then Teresa Hines, for some reason, reached over and tried to remove the thumb from little Jack's mouth. And they put that on the front page, and they never gave me access again. And because it did become a bit of a story, and it was the last day of the campaign. We were a little oiled on the plane, and they told me why I didn't get any access. So but anyway, it was because of that picture. This is security around George Bush at a campaign event on a football field. It's your tax dollars at work. This is the end of a Kerry rally. Anyway, and this is really the end of a career. I was walking through the Democratic National Committee offices in Washington, D.C., waiting for an event, and I saw in a closet was poor Adlai Stevenson, so if you win, your portrait's out in the main, but at any rate, so this time around, I've been working on a thing called smoke-filled rooms, and I'm really trying to, we live in a bubble in Washington, D.C. We move in a bubble in politics. Your politicians live in a bubble. They're protected inside that bubble. They campaign within a bubble, and so I'm trying to poke through this bubble as we go along. So this was called President Obama's 1% Solution. Each part has about 12 pages. I'm up to 73 pages. We're kind of doing like a serial novella, as Jim Estrin at Lens calls it. So I've just picked a few pages. So this is how the president fundraises. He's got a coptercade of 5 helicopters to go to a $25,000 a plate luncheon in Santa Monica. And that's outside the luncheon there. So I'm going for this kind of retro look on this, because I wanted to work on an iPad or an iPhone and get people to move within the frame rather than just flip through it. So this was on this contraception showdown in the Senate. This is where we first see Sandra Fluck, and how this is about how the campaign, the Democrats successfully managed to introduce this issue about contraception, and the Sandra Fluck hearing, which was not even a hearing, it was a meeting sort of set designed like a hearing. Any questions yet? Okay. And moving on to part 3 was Watching Sarah. This was when they began to make the film Game Change. They were really concerned that the Tea Party and Sarah Palin weren't going to be real players by the time the campaign started. So in the end, it became a big opening night, about as opening as you can get in Washington, D.C., with 500 high-end journalists showing up for this opening to see that actress, whatever her name is. That guy on the left is the one who, David Korn from The Nation, who found the 47% tape a couple weeks ago, and there's a list of some of the people that showed up on that. And this is Abe Lincoln having a drink in Iowa. And now this is actually the bubble, because as you move through in these, this was a bus tour. And I worked these reflections because the peculiar thing about this window is that for photographers, the depth of field, the focus, and the reflection was about the same as what was on the street. So again, to create the idea of a bubble on either side of the street. The candidate doesn't get out and talk to these people. They go to events that everybody's been pre-screened. They've emptied out the vets hall, the old folks home, and everybody's been tagged and bagged and what have you. So they never have to confront the voter in an unpoliced situation. This was Romney's trip to Israel, Poland, and so this is on the foreign policy. This was in Los Cabos with Putin. That ran as a series on the front page. Okay, and then from the conventions. And so I'm going to get through this really fast. And the We Built It theme, and this is the end of the old guard of the Republicans. Newt Gingrich as it is Newt University, and John McCain's wife there looking like a trophy on a shelf. And okay, and Clinton, who stole the show, the vote, get out the vote effort. This is all the Democratic National Committee, and that's that. Any questions?
Whoa, that was fast.
Any questions?
So, as Nina said, I was the Deputy Director of Photography at the White House. Before that, I was photo editor at Time Magazine for 10 years. And not only did I photo edit the Iraq War, as Nina said, I was international photo editor for 6 years. But before that, I was national photo editor, and I was Christopher Morris's photo editor. She showed those pictures. And I worked with Callie Schell and Diana Walker, who did behind-the-scenes photography, like P.F. Bentley's work. So in 2009, remember, we liked him very much, and everybody was in love with Obama, and in that spirit, I decided to go and photo edit for history. And the mission of the White House Photo Office is to document the presidency for history. When I learned that we would be uploading pictures to Flickr, I didn't change the way I thought about how I would view those pictures. And the mission really for the idea behind Flickr was really about the president's pledge on his first day of office, which was to bring transparency to government. The process was that I would look through about 10,000 pictures a week taken by 4 photographers. Pete Souza's the director of the photo office and also the chief photographer. And then I would make a select, and I would show Pete, and then we would show to Josh Earnest, who is a deputy press secretary, and then we'd put them out on Flickr. So this picture was taken actually before I got to the White House. I got there in April of 2009. And this was he was watching the Super Bowl, February 1st, 2009. And it just, when I saw this picture, I thought, this is really an iconic moment, and I thought this could be really interesting to live in this archive, which is basically what I did. But I was also interested in kind of the nuance and subtlety, and so this picture was taken in his first week of office using his phone, and it's just kind of this beautiful moment. And I think the transitions are really important, not only the icons, but also the in-between moments. This is an amazing picture. It's really just a piece of history. This is the president's speech. It was a major healthcare speech, September 9th, 2009. And you see, those are his markings, his writing on the speech. He's working with Jon Favreau, who is still the chief speechwriter. That's John in his office in the West Wing. And one of the things that's really surprising when you get to the White House, and this was part of the intention that I had with Flickr, was just to create this kind of peephole into history, into the White House and the president's world. The West Wing is a dump. It's like, maybe you guys can relate to this. It's college admissions office. And there's no windows. This is a back office. And what's amazing about this picture, and the next to the printer is a Daily News, and the president's picture is on the front page of the Daily News. And there's the bottle of Aleve on his business cards, which I'm sure he never opened those business cards because none of us ever did. And the carpet's kind of dirty, and it was just. And the thing about the White House is that we would not only put pictures out on Flickr, but we would hang them, 20 by 30 prints all through the White House, but the West Wing. And it was like the high school yearbook. I was the high school yearbook photo editor, and people would come out of their offices and say, this is the greatest part of being at the White House, seeing the pictures, including the President of the United States. And I thought, really? That's what the best part for you? That's pretty sad. But it was just, everybody loved the pictures. I have never worked at a place where photography was respected more. And also when we hung that picture up, Jon Favreau was walking by, and I could have a conversation with Jon Favreau about the picture. And it was this surreal kind of thing where I was sitting in an office mostly by myself looking through these 10,000 pictures a week, but then the story was right outside my door. And these people were living right outside my world. And these pictures happened moments before I was looking at them. This picture is the president going down the hall in the West Wing to bring a present to Jim Messina for his birthday. And in the first year that I was there, birthdays were huge. Everybody had a birthday cake. The president would come and bring people their presents. Again, I never worked at a place like that where the boss cared about your birthday. And it kind of struck me later, once I left the White House, which I left in late December 2010, because all of the reports and the stories about how factionalized this White House was, because I felt like, did they ever work at a news magazine or at a corporate, like media company? Because it's really, it was the nicest place I ever worked. And so the pacing was really important or interesting to me, and you could see kind of the stress of the job, and this is from a morning briefing. And then he opens the door during the day, and these children come in, and it's the Make-A-Wish children. And it was jarring to me in my process of looking at the pictures, because I was kind of bored in the meeting and bored, like he was probably maybe bored in the meeting, or then I could see him being stressed in the meeting. And then he opens the door, and it's these children, and the father is weeping. And I was incredibly, it was like watching this movie unfold. And this is a fist bump with Lawrence Liscombe, who was the guy who took my garbage out every day. And my office was in this building, possibly on that floor. The floors looked the same, but Lawrence came in, and that picture ran in Stern magazine as a double-page picture. Recently, it's gone viral, I think, more again. And so, it was like, it was real. I felt like this was, what I was seeing was not acting, it was the real thing. What also interested me was how people looked at the president, and this is in Ghana. I was actually on this trip in a hotel room, kind of like this room. I never saw Ghana, but I thought it was kind of, other than through the pictures, but people, he was, especially in the beginning, he was like a rock star, and just how people reacted to him was amazing to see. But then also what struck me was the isolation, the claustrophobia of being there. I felt it, and maybe I was just projecting, but he lives, and he said this above the store. I've heard another president say it's like the nicest federal security prison, and it really is limiting and incredibly isolating. And I think I definitely could see how lonely this job is. But then it's also his home. And this is, this moment where he's hugging Sasha. And it was really interesting because around this time, this is in the first year, I think spring 2009. And Sasha was 8 years old, and he was often picking her up. And I wondered, like, what's going on with Sasha? Is she regressing? Why is he picking her up all the time? And then, it's just this house, the White House it's a museum, it's an office building, it's a home, and it's a stage set. And it was really, I love these moments where he was just part of this history. And the house is mainly, what's amazing about the house are these paintings, the paintings of the former presidents that just loom like they haunt the place. And all the pictures kind of, the people play against those paintings, the history. So that's it.
So I wanted to talk just a little bit about the kind of broader image context in which sort of informs and around which a lot of these images circulate. And think about the question of a kind of aesthetics of patriotism and how we think about that in relationship to national identity and politics. So the fact that we, as a nation, as most nations do, have a kind of commonly shared aesthetics that can seem to signal in different time periods, right, the codes of patriotism. So iconographic codes, conventions, not necessarily generated by government entities and projects, but nevertheless that participate in a kind of commonly shared sense of the style of patriotism. Both managed imagery and also a kind of aesthetic that informs the shorthand of a lot of photojournalistic coverage of politicians and their political campaigns, whether it's symbols, gestures, images that we recognize as defining particular kinds of codes of patriotism, and also the ways in which documentary photographs respond to that, reproduce it, and play off of those codes. And a lot of the images that we've seen here so far this evening have been very explicitly about playing off those codes, right? Speaking to us as viewers who know the codes, right? And who recognize that they're being played with, right? And so I would like to suggest that the 2008 campaign of Barack Obama actually signaled a new kind of aesthetic of patriotism. And also that the 2012 campaign actually has produced a much more mundane and banal version. So it's almost like that aesthetic that was attached precisely to that sort of hope of Barack Obama, right, could not be sustained with him when he's actually in office, right? So his style quotient, I would say, has gone down dramatically over the last 4 years, and that may be actually the nature of the job and the institution itself. But I think I just want to go back briefly to the 2008 campaign and think about the kind of imagery that was produced around it. And some of this imagery was produced by the campaign itself, and some of it was in response to the campaign. So there was a much broader kind of image economy and grassroots image production around it. And I really feel like this signaled something new. It signaled the immersion into, or the sort of integration into political culture and the codes of patriotism of a certain kind of aesthetic that we associate much, much more with youth culture, with digital media, remix, replay, pastiche, the remake, the satire, irony, et cetera. And really, up until this moment, most political imagery in the United States had been amazingly conventional, if not kitschy. And I would say, I would say Clinton's era didn't have much of an aesthetic, unless it was sort of, little hints of white trash aesthetic. The Bush administration had a very particular kind of cowboy kitsch aesthetic that we associate with, long histories of American culture. So this certainly was new. And thinking about then a kind of emphasis on style that was a part of it. So style being certainly in that first campaign a key feature of Obama's public persona and appeal, right? The kind of style that appeared to come without effort to someone of cosmopolitan and complex origins, right? And a style that merged with a certain ease with the kind of style that we associate today with branding culture, with a kind of lowbrow to middlebrow to highbrow mixing of cultural forms, and this kind of aesthetic of pastiche and citation. And I would just say most political style is actually quite awkward. It's very stilted. We see this in a lot of the images. It's stilted in its orchestration, in its focus group guided talking points and photo op restrictions, right? Precisely why then we have a whole genre of documentary images around campaigns that are the behind the scenes genre, that are an attempt to get behind that then themselves, those images then themselves become conventions of that. So a key feature in that early Obama campaign was the Shepard Fairey campaign poster for Obama. And I feel really strongly that this poster is emblematic of the kind of imagery that circulated at that time that really spoke to a different kind of viewer, right? The kind of viewer who's accustomed to reading images as references and citations. The poster takes on certain kinds of conventions of political imagery, the image of the face, the three-quarter turn, looking toward the horizon, the imaginary horizon, the leader, right? But it very deliberately references and plays off the codes of patriotism rather than simply repeating them. So the colors of the image are slightly off, right? It's an off They're not the red, white, and blue. They're off red, off blue, off white. They play with the codes of the flag instead of reproducing them. The image very self-consciously deploys the visual style of Bolshevik agitprop political postering, right? Even though it was, produced on a computer, right? So the sense of newsprint, right? The signaling of the history of political posters and the use of the text to do that as well, all giving it a sense of political urgency, but also just playing with style, right? And very deliberately speaking to a viewer who gets that, right? Or constructing a viewer who gets that, right? And so I really feel that it had a sort of irony. It signaled a difference about the candidate while also then establishing a set of codes about him, in this case, looking like a leader, the word of hope, et cetera. The original, here's another version of it, and I'm sure you're all aware that this image, not only did it end up in the Smithsonian, this is other versions of it, but it's sort of the king of the knockoffs, right? I mean, it traveled very far in the Obama version, some made by Shepard Fairey, but then, it became something well beyond Shepard Fairey. This was actually a door knocker. Like you can't imagine that kind of image in a political campaign prior, the color, the whole way in which it's positioned there. I just want to say a little bit about the logo, which was referred to at the time as the hardest working presidential candidate logo ever, immediately inspiring knockoffs as well, signifying very subtly patriotism and the flag, the sunrise, yet also the O, right? And playing also on traditional codes of patriotism. It was designed by Saul Sender in Chicago and was adapted in very diverse ways by the campaign, and then Pepsi ripped it off, so it must have been working. Okay, so then everybody uses Shepard Fairey to go after Obama, right? So this is one version of that where they took Obey, which is Shepard Fairey's company's name and was his personal logo in a certain sense, right? And redid the Obama poster. And we've seen in the years since a use of that particular kind of color palette, right, to play off political pro-Obama, anti-Obama, et cetera, right? So it's interesting, after all of that we come to a moment now when actually the aesthetics of both campaigns and of a lot of the production of imagery around them is much, much more mundane. So here's I think this might be the CNN logo. It's one of the logos, right? So very typical, conventional kind of thing. This is one of the Obama images. So the palette is slightly different, right? Seems to have been cut off, but this screen is cutting it off, okay. But nevertheless, we've got a lot of stuff that's less playful, less innovative, and playing less in the context of the remake than we saw in 2008. Here, the logo much, much more conventionally looking sort of luminous and celestial, as well as the president himself being lit from behind. So if we think back to those earlier images and just see how much more conventional this one is by comparison. The Romney campaign has had a very white palette. I've noticed. There's a lot of their imagery. Though they're cheating, they're borrowing a few things from the Obama campaign, including the sort of curved line motif. They haven't had a particularly well-defined aesthetic. Some of their posters are quite odd. Though I'm interested in the use of a drawing here is kind of unusual. If you look at a lot of the images produced by the campaign itself and on their website, we can see all of those conventions and codes quite recognizable to us here. You know, the encounter with the person in the crowd, the back shot of the candidate, the important role played by the microphone in a lot of these, the casual look, well-orchestrated casual look. And here's that Shepard Fairey three-quarter pose, right, where, you know, we have them gesturing, looking off, and in a three-quarter shot. Oh, somebody made this. I thought I would throw that in. It's sort of the endless reference. I thought I would just show you a few, you know, of the couple of the issues that are the source of most conflict around the campaign. There's been interesting production of imagery. So healthcare obviously being a key issue being fought over, right? So this is the official healthcare logo. Other people have done versions, pro-Obama versions, using this, which then quickly have been remade and recoded. Oh, these circulate on websites and stuff. Different organizations put them together, right? So it's just part of, I mean, it is part of the same kind of recoding, remaking, pastiche that we see with all of those earlier images, right? Where people are playing off of the original logos. I think this might be my last one. This one's a little bit crowded, but you get the idea. It's saying no, like in 4 different ways. And then I just thought I would leave you with our most recent controversy. Who knew PBS could, like, get on the national stage, right? So people have been playing with Big Bird. using the Shepard Fairey codes. All right, so I'm sure we can come back to talk about all of this together.
Great. Good evening. It's exciting to see everybody here to do this live. Usually I roll out of my bedroom into my study and flip on the computer, and then there's people in different cities, but so this is pretty amazing. I wanted to just give you a snapshot of BagNews and then give you some examples of some images we've looked at, and then do that economically so we can move on to the Salon and start riffing on photos. But BagNews is about the social, cultural, and political reading of the individual news photo. We're particularly concerned with the power of photos to influence and persuade. Our goal is visual literacy, to make citizens better readers and consumers of visual news, messaging, and spin. After 8 years and 5,000 posts, our aim is every day is to look at how photos either perpetuate or, in other cases, how they expose, whether it's bias, stereotype, political spin, and a big theme that we see a lot is personality and PR agendas. Also, we aspire to be good visual investigators, so we're looking at photos, studying them for clues and information to uncover facts and truths they might contain. So let's just do like a quick sampling of some images. And you may be familiar with some of these. This photo went viral. It was referred to as Riot Kiss. But I think what it really speaks to is how deceptive it is to see like one slice of time, like one moment frozen forever. This was in Canada right after the Stanley Cup Finals in 2012. People were amazed that, a couple would make out in the middle of a riot. It was just like, how could something like that happen? And it just seemed like, maybe we're in some new kind of post, something. But anyway, what happened was, when you study it and you look at, especially you look at the video, you find out that this girl fell down. She got knocked down by a riot policeman, and her boyfriend was standing over her for a second. But the whole point was get up, get up, get up, because there's more cops coming down the street with horses, and we don't want to get trampled. So it was quite illusory. We're interested in not just being critical all the time and speaking truth to power, but looking at sort of the magic of imagery too, and how much can be read. This is the official portrait of Michelle Obama, taken early in the administration. And what's really brilliant about this, is taken in the Blue Room, is that she's standing in front of this portrait of Jefferson, former president, also former slave owner. It's interesting, we spend a lot of time on Bag News talking about gender, race also, but gender. And this is a photo, very recent, I think it was in the Vanity Fair a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Mika Brzezinski, Joe Scarborough, and looks like a stripper. She's looking at him, and he's looking at us, and is he going to be a presidential candidate? I don't know, but Atlantic's Liza Mundy was talking about how much women in TV journalism are having to always try and acquire erotic capital. This photo was also widely seen. It's a woman, an Egyptian protester, and she was being dragged by riot police, and her burqa gets pulled up over her head. And what was really interesting is the narrative around that, the discussion around that, was how much she was perceived as a victim, someone who is being shamed in the situation, becomes an object of pity. Well, we saw it a lot different. We were actually saying that that's picking up a lot of the kind of narrative that gets associated to women and the objectification of women, and when in fact, she really, in this photo, should be perceived, we felt, as a change agent, as a woman who's using her body in the service of democracy, as opposed to this being an example of exploitation. Again, an image that we were very interested in because it was both positive and also breaks stereotypes. This is a military funeral, and what you're looking at is the anguish of gay parents over the loss of their son. That's pretty nice. This photo did more to call out, I think, racial stereotypes that we otherwise don't think twice about. Then we are very much into talking about political celebrity, personality brands, personality PR. I think that's sort of like the dirty secret in a way of the whole like media scape, because there's so much of this is constructed in terms of people's persona, and we just absorb this, and we don't really unless someone has a fall from grace, we don't really like analyze the spin. So this was Asma Al-Assad and a Vogue feature taken 2 years ago, shot by James Notway, and it was just before Arab Spring. Just really incredible, just kind of romanticizing her and putting her up on a pedestal for being a glamour figure. I love this. This was in Esquire, maybe, I don't know if it's still in the newsstand or it's maybe a week old, but the question is, how much, after what went down, is he promoting himself? And how much is he promoting his movie, because the movie's out right now? How much is Clint promoting Clint at democracy's expense? Another, a more truth-telling photo, and this is one that we are, always trying to ferret this out, because this photo ran the week of the Republican convention in 2008, and it shows Sarah Palin sitting in a SUV outside of the convention center with Mark Schmidt doing her homework. These, I think, are really interesting. They're pictures from a radio debate on Mormonism that Mitt Romney had with a conservative radio host in 2008. And given my day job as a clinical psychologist, the BAG is very interested in understanding personality better, and, the guy's got a temper, This talks a little bit about how images can be staged to seem like, in this case, that here we are, that's just us with Obama, like we're a fly on the wall, when in fact, and this was taken at the Rosa Parks Museum during a fundraiser, actually, all the photographers that were there were kept behind a rope line while Pete Souza took this shot. And another thing it points out, too, is that how often I think the best photographs, or the iconic photographs, usually recall other photographs from history, and in a way that you sort of know, you sort of don't know. But when you look at this and you see where he's sitting, and you look at how he's looking out the window, it's pretty interesting. And well, anyway, I can go into political spin. We've been also very interested this year in the role of women in this campaign. Our last salon was on the war on women. We were looking at legislative battles over contraception, which had been raging earlier this year, and how the visual media was characterizing those. But the real issue, or a big issue this year, is the extent to which women are really serving as props versus there's any discussion or much discussion of the substantive nature about the issues that really affect women. And this little more exaggerated example. And then really quickly, have you all seen this? Okay, did you all see this? Okay, well, you guys are savvy. Okay, so you know what happened was that in the first half, and in fact, we were losing. It was Brazil 29, America 21. Sort of compounded the problem. Problem was that the kiss cam came on, and they didn't kiss. And some reporters say that she, rebuffed him, and others said he just didn't go for it. It's hard to tell what happened, but what we're pretty clear about from a lot of reporters is that, this is what Peter Baker from the New York Times tweeted. Not to be cynical, but Presspool was out in motorcade ready to leave and then brought back into arena in time for successful kiss cam redo. And you see we're winning now, too. It's like really great. It's 66-59. So it's like the team had a slow start, and President missed a beat, too. But then what's really great, and I think all this layering and framing is really amazing. This is the photo that ended up on the White House Flickr site, taken by Pete Souza. And there's no scoreboard anymore, so for posterity, it's like, this really an amorous scene, like, I don't know if it's like, the Olympics are coming and we're winning, and, this is like a charge, so anyway. Really quickly, a brilliant photograph, I think, one of the most important of this campaign season, I believe. And what happened was Evan Vucci pretty much defied the setup that the Gingrich campaign had established, where the workers were going to be like the wallpaper in the background. He went all the way around, shot it from the back, so that what you see is these women who basically are not only like kind of second thought or afterthoughts in this amongst these invited guests, but what's really also fascinating is that here's this event that's taking place while they're working it. You would think, maybe they can get off the clock for a minute and watch democracy in action. No, they're working all the way through. So we're going to segue into the salon portion of the evening, and I just want to make a couple of points about the salon, how it works. The salon, we've done, I think, 17 of them now, sort of kind of an amazing number. What we do is we take an edit of images based from some of the major news events of our time. And we want to understand how those events are being visually represented and how, maybe how the media is representing it. But we looked at the Gulf oil spill, the killing of bin Laden, Occupy Wall Street, the recession, Haiti earthquake. And it's a unique opportunity, we think, to look at photos, because as much as we all think like we look at photos, we talk about photos, I don't think we really do. I think what happens is we take a quick look at a photo, and then we're off associating to this thing and that thing and something else, but it's not like we're looking at the photo. So what we try to do is keep it there and come back to it and look at the dynamics of it and the elements of it and the composition of it and the narrative, the story in it. And so what we do, I think, is very unique. And then also what we're trying to do is get out of the silos, is to open up the discussion of imagery. We're in this culture that's like incredibly visual and just only getting more so. And so the conversation is the photographers who took the picture, photo editors, visual academics, subject matter experts. So, if you sit there and watch the Super Bowl, for example, and you watch these commercials, you know that they're hitting you from nine directions and all of this context and levels of meaning in there. So we're trying to basically level that playing field with political imagery. The format for the Salon is completely free-form, and hopefully we can engage you also in some of the conversation. We're going to look at maybe not 10 pictures, maybe 8, but we usually do about 10 minutes per photo. And I probably am not going to say much more, actually. We'd probably let's just look at the pictures. It's an eclectic mix, yeah. The one thing I will say is that the 10 or 11 pictures are pictures that don't really, they're not the pictures that the campaigns would want us to be talking about tonight. They're sort of outliers. So that's the one thing I will say about it, about the edit. And there's 2 photos, a diptych and another photo from Stephen Crowley. So we can get a little bit more insight.
The purple one, Michael.
The purple one?
The purple Salon PPT.
Oh, got it, okay. And go to slideshow. View slideshow, okay. And that should pop up.
It will in a second.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, here we go.
So we should look at them on our screen, huh? If you want.
Right.
You want to start in, Michael?
Yeah, so this photo is from the series, the Smoke-Filled Rooms series that Stephen was not only telling us about, but he showed us, quite a grouping of them already. And it was funny, I was talking to him on the phone, and he said, "Oh, I'm really glad you picked that one." And so to start off, I guess, with a question, because I think this is a special photo. What is special about this?
Well, again, that was part of this whole thing about the campaigning inside this bubble, and which is why shooting through glass, it's not a perfect picture, it's not sharp, that's fine with me. You'll see another picture here where the president's having a beer with people in a saloon, but that was the same trip. It might have been the same day. So, you go into the saloon, the knives and forks have been picked up, the Secret Service have gone through everybody, and everybody's scanned, everybody's kind of holding in place till they get there. But again, if you look at that particular chapter of the smoke-filled rooms, you'll really see America out there. The people that are really struggling, frankly, and really struggling to have a voice. So, they look like they're working, and they look like they're happy, and so.
Actually,
anyway.
to me, they look, especially the young man on the left, looks really pissed off. Right, that's what struck me, is that he looks angry, suspicious of what he's seeing, not welcoming. And then the guy on the right, well, he's excited because he's going to make a picture with his cell phone. But I found it in some ways, a little sinister, the whole scene.
I just found it to be terribly sad. You know,
It's
you go out and you
sad,
meet these people.
very sad, yeah.
You know, not with a campaign. It's tough out there. And it's not reflected in the average photo op. It's not reflected in the average picture from Pete Souza that's handed out from the White House. And now you've got Eric Draper, who used to work for George Bush for 8 years. And he just joined the Romney campaign, and they're doing the same thing. So these pictures are, I don't know how do they do it, through the communication director before they go out? Or
No, I mean, actually, you know, in my 2 years there, or 22 months, I never was in a top communications meeting. Nobody ever said, we want you to put out this kind of picture. I never felt like I was being told to mold the image of the president in a certain way. And, you know, and I believe that Pete, who is a serious documentary photographer, is really there with this clear mission to document the presidency for history, and this is what he sees. So, you know, I think that whether if you feel like what you're seeing from Flickr, and I think if you look through it, everybody can look through it differently, and you could pick out your own pictures and craft your own kind of idea of of your own image of what the president sees. That's the kind of amazing thing about photography, is everybody can interpret it in their own way. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting that you put in the caption, or did you write the caption? The unemployment rate in Ohio, a battleground state, improved over the year, because that's a key important point for the Obama administration.
You wrote the caption.
That, you know, hey guys, I helped save the auto industry, and Ohio's doing better. So I think that actually, Michael, when you said that the campaign wouldn't want us to talk, they would love this. And actually, it's also, I'm going to just segue into Chris's pictures of the Bush pictures. You know, my cousin Mary Goldman is here, and we had a show of Chris's pictures at her art gallery in LA. And somebody came up to me and said at that show, why are you making this administration look so good? These pictures look like advertisements for the administration. And, you know, that was not, you know, so everybody read into those pictures how they wanted to. And Chris continued to photograph the Bush administration for the whole 8 years. And they loved the pictures. Bush loves Chris. So they don't see negative kind of viewpoint.
It may say more about Bush, though. No.
But like back to Stephen's picture, I agree with what he said, is that this isn't really what we think of when we think of Americans, right? Or at least what we're seeing in the campaign. And I think that's why when I first saw this picture, when you put it on the poster for this event, I was like, wow. First, like, it reminded me of maybe something I might see from, you know, early Reagan campaign, you know, when we cared about workers in Ohio, you know, and they were actually like a big part of the news, the sort of Reagan Democrats, like this idea that the blue-collar worker would go Republican. And now, I just like looking at it, I feel as though these people have just gotten poorer, you know, and so yeah, I saw it as really pretty sad and pathetic in a way, and very unusual.
I do think that it's also, like, when we look at that, it makes us reflect on how managed the crowds are that we see.
Exactly.
Right? You know, that the people who are at the events have all been managed, you know.
Cast.
And so, so in that sense, I think the photo sort of signals that to us. Yeah.
I think that the other night I was having dinner with some people, and we were talking about sort of mourning the quick passing through of Occupy. But I think looking
It's not dead.
Well, okay, but looking at this photo, I'd say it's certainly not dead, because it feels like one of the legacies and impacts is that the Occupy movement kind of created a new standard for populism and honesty and questions about representation and especially like income and class division. And to the extent that we hear a lot of sound bites about that and a lot of lip service paid to that, you look at this picture and there it is. And it's, in a way, it's kind of demands an accounting, a photo like this. And also in terms of the emotion of it also, you know, it's interesting, the thing about sad, and you said it's sad, and Nina mentioned anger, and I think that they're both in there. That it starts to pull out those kind of feelings that we all have, the frustration we all have, that's not really getting addressed or heard or tapped into. And I think the photo does an amazing job tapping right into that.
Does anyone in the audience have something? Please, go up to the mic.
Is there some reason why the picture is black and white? Because is it like trying to bring all the three elements to the same level, sort of? Like the same plane?
I chose to do the project. I started in black and white.
Any reason why?
Like I say, I was going for, I wanted to make a distinction from the usual slideshows we were putting together, and I liked this neo-retro look, and I was trying to develop sort of a new way to look at pictures on the web. It only half works, so. It doesn't
great.
work on an iPad or on an iPhone, unfortunately, which was the whole idea, but it was a real roll of the dice that, you know, that I could, well, at any rate. Plus, it's easier black and white, frankly, so.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And then, if not, we'll move to the next picture. Yeah, please.
I hate these things. Yeah, it's sort of funny because like the body language of the guy on the left is challenging,
Right.
like something from a bar fight almost. You know, it's
Exactly.
like the other two guys seem rather established there. You know, so in a sense, it's like they almost you know, it's almost like it's kind of a parable of youth and age. Like the older guys are like they're not going to get. They figure that they're going to get what they're going to get. That guy looks disappointed though, and it really comes across in his stance and stuff. I used to be a newspaper photographer at local papers in New Jersey, and I remember some years ago I went to shoot Bob Dole in Somerville, New Jersey, and it was ridiculous because I really had the sense of the stage management of it, in the way that behind Dole on a huge white marble building, they put all young people who were obviously much younger than Dole and were holding like things like giant fingers or something. It looked like some kind of a hockey game, all right? And it was absurdly clumsy in the way that it was done. And it was clear that the Dole people did not really understand what they were doing very well, because when he walked off the stage, it played the theme from Monty Python. Dun, da, 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 da. It was really ridiculous. But I mean, you know, for people who were Dole supporters, those things didn't really occur to them. They didn't really notice that, for example, there wasn't anybody behind Dole who was older than 30. All right? And Dole himself was trying to look so energetic that he looked completely insane. I mean, like the photo of him looks absurd and angry and bizarre. They didn't use it, by the way, a very Republican town that I'm from, where I was working. Anyway, do you think they've gotten better at this? Is this really something where there's, I mean, clearly there's a history going back to Roosevelt and so on. But I mean, have they gotten really better? Is this kind of manipulation, has there been any point where it's really led up? Do you think that it's, you know, where does it really start to become so really extensively managed as it seems to be now? And have you seen a lot of hiccups in it when you've looked?
Throw it to the editors.
Throw it to Scott.
Well, you're the one who's actually out there. I mean, you know, I feel like the whole thing with transparency, which was the president's oath on his first day in office, this administration will be more transparent than ever any other government. But and so I think they were in some ways, it's like opening the curtain, and you're not, I think their idea was if you pull open the curtain, you're not going to be shocked by what you see. And there's not this kind of Oz. Oz is actually a guy, like in the movie. You know, it's like there is a man, and it's It's not this machine crafting this image. The people, what shocked me, I was older than most people working there, at least of the press department people. And I wasn't, Pete Souza does not report to the press department or to the communications department. He reports to the president. So I reported to Pete. And so I didn't report to anyone in the press office. I went to meetings in Robert Gibbs's office basically so I could go to a meeting in the West Wing, and felt like I should do this because it's history. But they're very young. This isn't like it's possible it's happening because I'm just looking at the pictures coming in through my computer, but I don't feel like the craftsmanship is that sophisticated as you might think.
Well, I don't know, it seems to be more obvious that it's being crafted when that crafting process fails. Like, for example, I mean, and the Republicans aren't, I guess they've gotten better because the George W. Bush's campaign seemed to be more effective at conveying an image of him that was sympathetic in some way and making him look like a guy you wanted to have a beer with, despite the fact that he did not drink. And, which I thought was a very weird thing, but it's like you go back and you look, for example, the campaign of John McCain, which was a total disaster in presenting an image of McCain as a person. And it seems like the Obama campaign has been remarkably successful, excepting possibly, Shepard Fairey's illegal appropriation of somebody else's image to do it.
Can I stop you here because we want to move on to the next picture, which is, we'll continue the beer subject matter.
I'm actually interested to know what Marita has to say about this in terms of codes, because I maybe don't read them, as well as or as quickly. But just a little bit of context of why it's in the edit is that, well, for one reason, this has been the signature symbol of the Obama campaign, and I assume it has to do with identifying with Main Street, and he's always tried to connect himself with the common man and tried to, eliminate all kinds of senses of power and the imperial presidency. But I chose this one in particular because, and I think also he also got taken to town by Hillary Clinton in the Rust Belt 4 years ago when she's drinking. She went from beer to whiskey, and he was still like, I'm on Newsweek with the arugula cover. I mean, I'm getting killed here. But so he's done one beer and pub photo op after another, after another, after another, after another. We got, we just stopped collecting all the images. But this picture is really interesting, and I won't say much more about it, but there's a kind of ambiguity to it. You're saying, like, what works and when it succeeds and fails. And I don't know if this failed. I don't think it succeeds, but there's this sort of raises more questions about the strategy to me. But I'm sort of interested in, Marita, and how you read it in particular, and then just in general, in terms of the symbolism.
It's further down, and I just lost it.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's like the 8th one.
Yeah, there it is.
There you go.
Well, obviously, we do read that code of him, being able to participate in ordinary guy stuff, right? So it's about workers, it's about class. I mean, one of the things that I had mentioned before about this image is that the lighting is a bit off. So Obama and the guy he's drinking with actually look like they have the same skin color, which is kind of interesting. They're both a little pink, right? Obama doesn't look like he's having a very good time, though. So the question is really like, okay, we get the code, we've seen it a gazillion times, right? So is this image just presenting it straight, or is it playing with it a little bit?
How would you answer that?
Well, I think the whole thing is uncomfortably close, just like I have a feeling that the photographers were all sort of lined up and like pushing
Right.
in
Waiting
to get,
for the moment
in
for the
that-
beers to hit.
And that the flash is a little overexposed
Yeah.
and kind of direct and ugly. But, normally when you click glasses with someone, you look at them, right? And so that's what
Maybe if you're afraid of missing, I don't know.
Well, but I'm saying is that's what I got from looking at it, that it was like, it's an attempt to make a connection, but there's something lacking, so you connect through this ritual, right? But like, they don't really want to look at each other, and then the
And
people in
Obama's
the back
kind
are.
of enduring it.
Yeah, they're all kind of enduring it, and then the guys in the back are all kind of like searching around, like kind of participating, but kind of looking for something
Well,
else. So-
Actually, we were pre-positioned, I was there. There was
Oh, you were
Okay,
there.
tell us.
And those are two
yeah.
Secret Service agents. The guy with the beard, that's his personal bodyman right there. I'm sorry, there was 4 photographers pre-positioned, and one TV camera, the pool camera. And that's the TV camera's light, which evened it up. Those are 2 Secret Service agents on either side of them. And Obama came in, we were there, that guy turns on the lights, and now there's enough light to make the shot. And that is Amherst, where I made that other picture, by the way. So,
But the guy,
Stephen, make sure you,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
the guy with the goatee, though, is Secret Service or not?
That's his
That's
lead
personal
agent.
lead
That's his
agent,
lead
yeah.
agent.
Oh.
And behind him, the man in the
See, I
middle.
thought he was like a bar guy.
Smile, dude.
The man in the middle is Marty Nesbitt, who's the president's best friend. And to me, he just looks kind of exhausted. You know, it's just kind of, how many of these have they done?
I think he looks like he's not into it, but I'm wondering if, well, you were there, I'm wondering if he's trying too hard, like he's trying to really look into it, like I'm really down with this guy.
No, I think I think that's just a bad frame, frankly. I mean, I think he
I agree with Steve.
no, to be fair to the president, he probably stood there for 10 minutes and talked to 2 couples that were sitting there.
But what's interesting then, bad frame, because you're not the first person to say that. So, but this picture was probably more widely published than there was. I mean, there was a lot of pictures from that event. So, what made this one so popular?
I'll throw that to the editors again, so.
You know, I think there's a whole, and we're going to be like the only people up on talking about this in a couple of hours if you let me start, because I won't stop. But there's a whole huge, the media landscape has changed drastically, as we all know. And part of these kind of images that are out on the internet this is a new world of imagery, and we've heard a lot about being oversaturated with images. So images like this, so maybe, you know, there was an age where there were only a few places where you could go and see campaign photography, and now it's all over the place. So perhaps, you know, the quality of editing is not, who's editing these pictures? Maybe there aren't editors. Maybe that's, I don't know the answer to that, but I would wonder about these images that we're seeing, that they're becoming pervasive, whether this kind of curation, the skill of curation, is disappearing.
We have a question from the audience.
I was going to ask a question similar to what you guys are talking about right now. As photographers, you're trying to get these images that say something, that symbolize something. And you were saying that this could have just been a bad frame. And maybe in video, if we were watching it on a video, you know, you'd see, you know, maybe this was 2 seconds. How do you, I guess, balance finding that symbolism and then creating that symbolism as photographers? Does that make any sense?
I mean, I think you have to fully engage, and then you pick a frame and send it into New York. Your editors are confident that it represents the mood of the place, the mood of the president, the interaction. I mean, there's that picture running around of Romney where somebody's looking at his rear end. I saw it, and it's like, and I'd like to know more about that. I mean, that's kind of, but so that's our job, is not to misrepresent the people we cover, even in a controlled situation. Fair enough, then make it look theatric, but you can still find real moments in there. And make a true assessment.
Should we go to the next one?
Sure.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, I think there's a bigger issue in just this kind of image, the way in which this idea that presidential candidates have to constantly enact some kind of ordinariness, when clearly they are not ordinary people, and especially the President of the United States is not, right? But the way in which they themselves perform and produce these images that are about their relationship with workers, irregardless of what their policies might be, you know, and it was great that you showed Reagan clearing the ranch, right, because that was sort of the sort of originary moment of this idea of somebody like Reagan, you know, not your average guy, right, doing something that made him look, you know, like a man of the people. And it's amazing how powerful this narrative remains.
The thing that really shocked me in going to the White House and seeing these pictures, and I got to see the family Thanksgiving, and I got to see Christmas morning. He is a regular guy.
Yeah, Christmas morning with a bunch of photographers sitting around.
No. This is Christmas morning. This is pictures were not released.
What's striking in a lot of what
This
you
is
showed
not-
is that there's a photographer there.
Pete Souza follows him everywhere. Pete Souza, it's almost like he's the wedding photographer, and that is the one thing that the president has to get used to, having this guy follow him everywhere. But Pete Souza actually spends more time with the president than I think the president spends with his wife, and it's real. The family Thanksgiving is those pictures are not to be released. This was Michelle's family coming to the house, the White House, and it's actually very institutional. The family Thanksgiving in the East Room, and yeah, they're drinking beer, and the kids are playing parcheesi, and that's what shocked me.
But I think we're talking about the rituals they go through on the campaign trail to convince the public that they are like us. And even
He
if
is like us.
Okay.
He is. I mean, really,
But then-
people. He is.
Well, so is Mitt Romney. I mean,
Yeah,
when Mitt Romney
exactly.
comes to the back of the plane, he says it's off the record. He leaves every reporter sitting there saying, why isn't this guy on the record? And that's the problem, you know, there is that.
I mean, of course, they move beyond into this other realm, and maybe 4 years into it, you know, but I think the thing that shocked me more than anything else was that, you know, and that's why the pictures where you see the West Wing looks like a college admissions office. It is not that, you've been to the White House, it's not fancy. I went to the Kremlin. The Kremlin is gilded, is a gilded building. And that was all part of the founding of this country, that the president was going to live in this humble house. And it kind of, I went to Camp David. It's not, it's a rental. You know, it's like
timeshare.
It really is. I was shocked in the reverse.
But let's,
I mean, I was not shocked that that suddenly, well, now I'm going to get to see him as a king. No, it's not. It's not. And 8 years ago, the guy still had student loans, and that's true.
But I think also, and then I want to get back to these pictures, but I think that probably
See, it's hard to talk
One
about
that-
pictures, isn't it?
no, but that anyone probably working at any White House in any presidency might say similar things. You know, that people that were close to Bush probably said he's just a regular guy. They have their family dinners, and he's just like us. And so, but that's not really neither here nor there for the electorate. Right? Because and what we're doing here tonight is trying to figure out the image that they're projecting through their stage-managed appearances, which are constructed by a whole team of people who have particular agendas, right?
Well,
And I think,
that leads nicely into this image, because this image, and we are used to these images now, this image is about showing us, you know, behind the scenes, the apparatus, the empty seats, the photographers in the back of the room, right? And we are used to that. We're used to the photographer stepping back and giving us, it's like your other image that we have here of Ann Romney's microphone taped on her back, right? Giving us that broader context.
Right, like this is probably not an image that the Romney people, when they were staging this, thought photographers were going to make. And he got a lot of flack in the campaign about the empty space. I mean, certain reporters started tweeting images, right? Look, he's got this big, what was it, a stadium?
Yeah.
And he's at,
And he
and
can't
it's
fill
like,
it,
the
yeah.
pictures look like it's filled, but actually, it's just like a little sliver, like kind of on Times Square New Year's Eve. You know, they show a tiny crowd, and you get a sense that like there are zillions of people, and it's just like this very narrow look. But when I first looked at this picture, which I think in some ways is another like bad frame, right? It looked to me like some really boring corporate meeting, you know? And that like almost like they were being retrained for some other job, you know? I mean, if you've ever been to places where people have just been told they've been fired, or they're in their new retraining or a management meeting, I mean, something like super dull.
Well,
you
the
know?
other thing you really see is the barrier between him and them.
Exactly,
You know,
yeah.
like they're in a cage, right?
Yes.
He's being protected from them almost.
And that's probably, Elle's right, Secret Service sets up the buffer zones, and
It seems also like with the light coming in from above and the hallowed, it has kind of a hallowed quality, and then, I don't know what that banner is, I think it's actually a Pepsi sign, but I keep seeing the Madonna every time I look at that for some reason. And it just seems like that's even like raises the cynicism, you know, even more.
That's the Obama logo that Pepsi stole, right?
And very white, by the way, like you were saying before.
Does the audience have something on this one?
I think, as everyone else is already saying, it's interesting how it's clearly this very planned out, oh, it's a full audience, everyone's there, everyone is lined up, and it's almost as if the setting, as if everyone's going to be picked up and moved to the next setting. The setting is there, it's a major player in the picture, but this is the exact same group of people and candidate and everything else that's going to be moved out to a cornfield next, and that's where that shot is.
And that's what he's telling them,
Tell
they're going to go
with,
next.
You know, the size of just how big and still empty the stadium is, and I think it's a Pepsi logo, right? I also thought it was some type of religious symbol, but then just above that to the right, you have, I think that's some type of construction company banner that's still up, probably.
Right, Belfort,
whoever
right.
set up the lighting or something like that. And you get this very strong sense that everything here is just, they're not here. It doesn't really matter where they are. They're just, these are the people, here's the candidate, everyone's speaking. All of that is nicely lit, and let's move to the next place.
This was taken at the Republican convention by Spencer Platt, and did you want to mention the echo to the earlier?
Oh, I don't know. I
No?
just feel like it's like, I mean, I think it's a pretty harsh picture, you know, kind of poking a hole in this whole we built it thing. Well, who's actually building what and cleaning up after us? And so, I don't know, I thought it was a fairly opinionated picture.
Again, I mean, I think it's a picture where someone's saying, who knows how the currents underneath these pictures and then cause one to rise to the surface. But in a way, it's screaming out, you know, you guys aren't talking about two Americas. You're really not talking about class. You're not talking about race. And, you know, so here it is, like right in your face. And I think there's I really think a lot of these pictures, and maybe disagree with you a little bit, I think there's an orneriness out there that you are seeing in the imagery. I think you see that
In the photojournalism, you mean?
Yeah, and I think it's called for. The picture that Evan Vucci took in that factory, you know, is just like, you know, it's sort of calling bullshit in a way. And I think it's your point also, you know, is that people know the difference, you know, in terms of artifice and when it's like, you know, getting really stagey, and there's less tolerance for it. So I think that and you know, Mario Tama, who's a Getty photographer, as soon as he saw a variation of this, he sent me a photo that he took in 2008 in a stadium at a McCain rally. And it was almost the exact same picture that was the first picture that came out of this, which shows you this long shot of, there they are, all pushed down to one end of the stadium. And he was saying, isn't that interesting that this year, this thing just was like hit the news and everyone was talking about it. And he said, you know, we didn't move that McCain picture. I held it.
But also in this picture, I mean, it's really striking that there's no one in the seats. You know, imagine this picture if the seats were filled. It would have a whole different, you know, sense to it. I mean, it's kind of like we built it, but we're not going to show up to talk about it in a way, or there's something I find powerful in the emptiness, that there's no one there, you know.
And
I'm not quite sure how to read it, but I feel it when I see it, like it makes it more powerful in a sense.
And whose backs did we build it on?
Kind of. I mean, it's like, does anyone have a,
Actually, it was a question I had for Stephen, which is, you brought up a couple times photographs and how they translate on an iPad or an iPhone. Is that something you consider now when you're taking photographs, or that you discuss with your editors, kind of how different photographs will translate into all these portable medias?
Well, I mean, the good news is that the iPads and the iPhones and those devices you can run more pictures than ever. I mean, 4 years ago, it was the first time I said, my God, they ran everything I took and wanted more. So it's a great opportunity out there. So smiles out there. Agree. So yeah, now you can aim for narratives, slideshows, themes, and there's a place to put it. So.
The
Are
next
you trying
photo-
to shoot tighter for the iPhone?
No, not at all. No, the idea of this, even because they're all there, why are you shooting circles? Why are they so small? Because I want people to explore the space, you know, and have a big picture to hook them in, and then get them to spend more time, not just clicks, but time on the slideshow, engage. Plus you know, as an editor, you know, you can do a lot more when you can incorporate design in your decisions. So.
yeah.
I was hoping, sort of inspired by this and also the beer picture, you could say a little bit more, both from perspective of shooting and of editing, about text in photographs. I noticed in the beer picture, the sign behind the president's head perfectly recreated that logo, that kind of circular Obama logo, but it also recreated the halo effect from the picture we saw before. But unfortunately, it had the word old in it, right, kind of stapled onto his head. And that made me think of your King photo that you showed in his car. And, you know, right, so old, no. No old, that's pretty much. And, you know, I still see every once in a while someone on Facebook will post, as if it's real, that clever Photoshop of the Romney people where they each have a letter on their chest and someone swapped it so it's money, you know. But also that we built a thing, and the King photo, you know, make me think of this thing people do now where they superimpose text on pictures. How much of this do you kind of worry about as an artifice effect? And, you know, how, I guess, is there a tension you feel in terms of representing the text that's in a scene, or selectively editing it, or, you know, getting a commentary out of it?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but the King picture, for instance, I used to do a lot for Sunday Review, Weekend Review, and I love doing that kind of thing for illustrations, and I can kind of put a little bit of a bite and humor and opinion in that kind of stuff, but I have to be really careful, and I'm fine with that. Again, you have to be fair. You can make somebody look any way you want, you know, and you just have to make that judgment, and your editors, you build a relationship with your editors that you trust that what you're sending them. I mean, rarely do I send more than a handful of pictures, and we're working at breakneck speeds and that, so I don't think that he was necessarily editorializing in the beer picture. I think he was stuck in that one spot where they moved us, and every time you move, somebody's threatening to shoot you, so, you know, it's...
Oh, sure.
So, So Jim Watson's a really great photographer, but I don't think he sets out to editorialize. I mean, sometimes the judgment, and just quickly, when we went to Nantucket for 3 days to sit there while John Kerry was writing his campaign speech. So my job is, at least, I don't get much access, and that's fine. I can work around that, but it is my job to ask for access. So I kept saying, I'd like to get a picture of Kerry while he's working in his little den on the water, and he's supposedly writing out his speech in longhand. I put in the requests every day, and every day they said, we're not going to do that. So in the end, they let one of your magazines do it, but it was Diana Walker got in there. But each day, they took the pool out in a boat, which we paid for, because we pay for everything, and because they were, 3 days in a row, they wanted a picture of John Kerry windsurfing. And that was their choice. And then I kept saying, this is a setup, we can't do it, blah, blah, blah. On the third day, we ran the picture, and we explained it, that it was no picture of him writing his speech looking professorial, but that goofy picture of him that he regretted ever since. So, I mean, that's the game we play. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but.
Michael, you want to go?
So
There's also, you always see the eagle, the majestic eagle on the seal. So, some wag will get down there and make sure they get it so that it's coming out like donkey ears. And a wire shotter actually moved a picture of, it looked like Bush was braying, and he has and the Washington Post ran this picture like 3-column vertical. Fine, okay, if that's your choice, if that's your, I thought it was editorializing, but would you ever see that with President Obama? No, or candidate Obama. So, again, you have to, this responsibility of the editor and the photographer to work those
Michael, you want
issues
to talk
out.
about this one?
well, actually, to pick up on the question about, I guess it was, well, it wasn't about Instagram, it was about framing, but one theme going through the campaign this year is this whole issue of distribution and working, going direct to consumer, I guess you might call it. So this photo was taken by Ben Lowy for the New Yorker. He was the New Yorker Instagram correspondent at the Republican convention. And I think you do see where they are going for it a little bit more, I think, with that kind of imagery. And I think it was, in some way too, I think he's just, I think he's just going for the juggler, wouldn't you say?
Hard to
Well,
say, I don't know Ben Lowy, so. I think I'll pass.
I mean, when I look at this picture, and I feel like I wouldn't want to have a conversation with these people too much. They look really off-putting, and the fact that they're saying the pledge, right, that's what they're doing, and they look sort of fierce about it. I mean, to me, it suggests a really aggressive form of patriotism that then you would connect with Romney because it's the RNC. And so, there are lots of different, I mean, Lowy could have chosen any people from the crowd to make this picture, right? And he chose this, and so he's telegraphing something with this choice, right? The post-processing in it, okay, it's slightly green, it's a little like higher contrast, so that's in the app, but it's not like super, super heavy, it's more the gesture of the hands, right? And then also, I mean, the three people, so the guy in the front looks kind of the most mean, right, or most angry. Then you got the guy on the right, on the right, and he's a little skeptical or something. I mean, Michael, you could read these expressions better than me. And then the guy in the back who looks the most well put together, in a sense, in terms of his hairstyle, all of that. I mean, he seems to be definitely of a certain class, right? He's kind of, is this guy going to be the guy for me, in a sense? I mean, that's how I look at this sort of trio.
Yeah, I probably could have set this up a little bit better, too, because I think when I look at it, I'm thinking that the Republicans put on a convention where the people they had speaking it was like a rainbow convention. So a lot of women, Latino women, African Americans, and it just didn't ring true at all. It was really strange.
When you looked at the crowd, it didn't ring true.
Well, when you looked at the program on stage, it
Right.
really didn't ring true. And then when you look in the crowd, it didn't ring true. And so I think, again, it's subjective, but my sense that what Ben's doing here is saying, hey, this still is there's the Tea Party was sort of low-keyed, and you've got these, white,
Angry white men,
angry
upper
white
class
men.
angry white men.
Yeah, and if no one's going to show them, I'll show them. And they're pissed.
Right.
But
They're
you
really
could
pissed.
also say that nobody would look good from this angle with the, I mean, so there is.
Like they got set up.
Well, I mean, it's the way the Instagram works, and it's the framing, and it's the angle that it was taken from, right? So, but maybe you should say more about the circulation of Instagram images.
Well, I mean, one thing that's interesting is that, I was talking to Stephen about this, is that the wire services, for example, have just created hashtags on Instagram, and and this year they have photographers that they're doing the more, I guess would be more mainstream type imagery, and then the rest of the time they're shooting stuff that's both quirkier. So it's like, this is what we had for lunch, and here we are waiting, because we sit around, as pool reporters around the pool, a lot of the time. But then there's a lot of imagery too that they're shooting that's pretty cynical, and it's showing the wait staff coming in and out of these private dinners, or it's the front of some guy's gated community in Hillsborough, and it's like to the nines where these people live, or the $200,000 car that's sitting there in the in the garage. So in a way, maybe it's there's like this kind of bigger channel right now of distribution, and so you are getting pictures, and maybe it's because people are like you were saying, not buying it. So now, we're getting it's getting truthier.
Well, I guess jumping off that point, that was my question. People still know that you're still in a pool, you're still being controlled by what the officials want you to see. So what happens when a reporter who just doesn't care whips out his cell phone and takes a picture of what's actually happening and not what they want you to see, and he tweets that? That tweet goes more, viral faster than you ever would be able to get to your editor, upload your picture, send it, and then publish it. So how do you deal with that sense of people who have the ability? The picture may not be, as well framed, well lit, but it's real, it's raw, and it's there. So how do you deal with that juxtaposition of someone who can just get it out there and get the truth out there faster, other than, a well-crafted piece of work?
Well, I mean, I email it to myself and then put it into Instagram, so that's how I get it out there. But that's easy enough to address that. I don't know if there's that much going. The truth of it is, you're close to the candidate, but you're really pretty far away, almost as far away as everybody else. I mean, you see a little bit more. It's not a whole lot to get. But he's always 15 cars ahead of you, and you're running, to get up there. By the time he's already in the tent in the back door, and Pete Sousa's making beautiful pictures, and you're being hustled up into the buffer again, So on the way in, you start looking for things, and you pick up little strands of information as you go along. But as far as to answer your question directly, I don't really feel that. I mean, look, by the time we get into the buffer zone, you go in and it looks like, it looks like there's 1,000 hands up like this. Everybody in the audience is already tweeting back, seriously. So, I mean, all we have left is access, and, and hopefully we're trying to tell a story and trying to interpret what we're seeing and Look, it's sports. You can sit there on the 50-yard line, it's still a game, people in the same uniforms and that, but somebody's hurt, one team's winning, one's losing, you see a strategy change, you see the concern. That's exactly what we observe. Same thing as covering a football game. Seriously, that's what it is. It doesn't matter how many people are tweeting it, you're interpreting it, and that's what access. That's why we spend so much time, money, and what have you to be out there on this body watch because we're looking around the edges. We're looking for along the roadside for what.
I guess a little background, has everyone seen this photo? And probably, I would say it's probably the most viewed, the most recognizable photo of the campaign this year. I mean, I love metaphors, but I try not to go crazy on them or do the big reach because someone always says on the site, I think you're, Occam's razor. But here, this is the day after a pretty successful Democratic convention, and Obama, again, in another kind of bar, Main Street, pizza kind of place, and this guy is a Republican, Scott Van Duzer, and and I have to say too, he asked first. So this is a very staged photo because he went to the Secret Service. And he said, "Can I lift? I want to give him a hug." And everyone said, "Yeah, that's great." And Obama said, "Yeah." So he lifts him up, and to me, it's like he got a big lift out of this convention, and reaching across the aisle, and I think it's quite exuberant. It's really interesting how things change so quickly after given the debate. But or Obama was on a real high.
But it's also, so I didn't know all of that background, like that he got permission from the Secret Service. So part of why people respond to an image like this is that it does look unstaged. It looks like, hey, I think wasn't the caption, "Can he do that?" Or something like that. Like, somebody can do that to the president? Whoa!
Yeah, he would have been shot, I think, actually. That's what I was told.
So it does read more authentic. It reads like it's off script, which is why it's attractive.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I should warn you, I'll just come up and start commenting on everything.
Good. Do it online, too.
Interesting things here is that this is one of the few shots that we've really seen in this campaign season that brings us back to 2008. Like, this is the exuberance that people felt about Obama 4 years ago. And you don't see that anymore. It just doesn't
In
happen.
2008, there was something called behind-the-scenes photography from Time and Newsweek. And one of the changes now is that Time and Newsweek don't have the budgets to cover candidates. And you build that kind of, the access that Stephen's really frustrated by trust. Callie Schell started covering Obama in 2006. So it was 2 years of covering him. The first time she went out with him, it was Callie Schell and Senator Obama in a car. And at the end of this long run, he said, "Callie, you've been here from the beginning." So there's that kind of trust and relationship. Access is trust, access is power. And I think one of the things that happens is because when you see all of this scripted stuff is because, and this I did witness from inside the White House, they feel like they can't win. The press is going to see the agenda that they want to see. They're going to see, so therefore, they're going to start to worry about how pictures are going to be framed. And it's so important, as we saw from the debate, what was that, last week, 2 weeks ago? Image is so important. He could win or lose this election based on image. So therefore, they want to put somebody in that job or have somebody like Pete Souza. When Time and Newsweek and their access started to dissipate, they said, let's just do it ourselves. These pictures exist in other presidential archives. From Lyndon Johnson on, there's behind-the-scenes photography with presidential photographers documenting the presidency. This administration just said, let it out. When I was in 1996 or something, I was at U.S. News and World Report. I went to the Clinton White House to do a year-end edit. We would do these kind of pictures of the year things. And I went through these archives, a lot of it negatives, picked a picture that I still remember of Hillary sleeping with with Chelsea in a bed on Air Force One. It was a beautiful picture, very intimate. And I made the selection of pictures, not one of them were approved. And we got these kind of out front pictures because for their vantage point it was, we want to make them look presidential. Obama kind of got the sense that, I think that really they felt if we show who he is, that is a good thing.
And I would argue it would be a better thing if the press were allowed to show that. I'm
Right.
not frustrated, but remember, I would also argue, would we have accepted handouts or a Twitter feed or whatever it is, Flickr feed from Richard Nixon during Watergate? We wouldn't. So, listen, I have nothing but respect for Pete Souza, friend of many years, colleague. He worked at the Chicago Tribune before he went to the White House, so we used to sit and complain about the same things in the briefing room. So, and he's a wonderful photographer, an honest, wonderful man, and that shop put out amazing. I mean, Mike, all those photographers are Jackson and Chuck Kennedy and what have you. But it's still, that's the issue. You're right. The media can't afford to cover. It costs $2,000 a day for me to go out with a candidate. That's the average. We pay for everything. Well, most news organizations can't afford it now. We can't really afford it. So now you're resorting to using pictures from the Flickr feed, and there's nothing wrong with that.
But the New York Times
There's a
doesn't
place
use
for it.
pictures, the newspapers don't use pictures from the Flickr feed. The Flickr feed has really affected kind of magazine photography. The
Right.
New Yorker,
No,
Rolling
and
Stone,
small
those,
newspapers and television stations and
New York
that.
Magazine.
But just to back up Stephen, I think on that, I threw this one in, the panelists didn't see it, but it starts to show you how the kind of savvy and the how much the White House, and I think I think
Yeah,
they probably
I
did
edited
start
that
with
picture.
that. Oh, this one?
Yeah.
No, this is the one with the glasses. This is the one of him getting lifted up.
This picture?
Yeah.
Which picture you want to show? This one or the one before?
No,
This is
this
2000.
is
okay.
not the picture of him with the glass. He's been on Letterman twice, and it's almost the exact same picture. Letterman was showing the picture you showed of him with the glasses.
Right, and this was also taken by Pete Souza.
Right, but what I'm saying is that what the White House has done here, which is really interesting, is, right, it's a White House photo of Obama on the Letterman show on TV, holding up to Obama or putting on a computer this picture that was probably the most favorable picture of the campaign so far of him getting picked up in that pizza place.
This was,
Yes,
right,
this
right,
is a
right.
couple
This
weeks.
is a different one.
This is a couple weeks ago. But and in fact, it's almost the exact picture that
Of
you're
his
thinking
laugh.
of,
His laugh
which
was
is him
exactly the
showing
same.
the picture of Obama 4 years ago, with the the glasses in that White House theater. But it's just ingenious that the White House can get an amazing amount of mileage now in terms of visuals, where this has so many layers to it. They have access to the set of Letterman. You didn't, but Sousa does. And so this picture, I looked for any other version of it on the Newswire. No one got it. And they're just playing, levels and levels of advantageous imagery, all like now, packaged together like a pancake. I mean, it's pretty sophisticated. So yeah, I wouldn't want to be the guy who's like saying, can I get access on, inauguration night in that elevator? No, I'm not going to get in that elevator, but, so.
Callie Shell was in the elevator.
Yeah, and she got a knockout shot. So, I don't know, it's.
But from their vantage point, why should they, why should they let somebody in if they think that person is going to, first of all, there's a pool. And I think that the White House pool system has not kind of reacted, updated to the changing landscape. So they could ask for, we want one guy, and are you in the pool now? Is the Times in the pool? Because the magazines have dropped out. We want to put in one person from the pool and have him cover the entire night. But that's something that they want to know who you are, and are you going to make
Right,
him look
yeah.
like an idiot, basically. I mean, there was one, I released the picture of the president swimming in Florida after the BP crisis. And the wire photographers in the pool protested very strongly. And it was the president's feeling like he was going to be bare-chested, and he did not want that picture on the front page of newspapers. Now, because that could be used in a negative way. Now, should the pool have access to that as opposed to Pete Souza? I looked at those pictures. Pete shot it. You know, it happened. The guy, he went swimming. He was with Sasha. They went swimming. There's nothing wrong with his chest. You know, the pool could have been there, but they chose not to because they don't trust the press.
Listen, I'm fine with that. That's what I'm
basically
saying. I'm absolutely fine with that.
And they have a reason not to trust the press.
Our job is to, we'll
Because
present the president the way.
The press is no longer unbiased. In 2000, when I was working at Time Magazine, if you chose a picture of Bush looking one way, you had to choose a picture of Gore looking the same way.
I remember
There's a Newsweek
absolutely.
cover this summer that's, he's got to go. Obama's on the cover, he's got to go. So editorializing is very much a part of our new media landscape.
Gregory Heisler's picture of double exposure, and, you know, what's that woman who, Jill somebody or other, that did the picture of McCain with the, what was her name?
Jill Greenberg.
And she's
It's not
free,
a
and she
cross
said,
line,
she blamed it on the art director. They should have done more research on her. It's like,
Let's do two questions. Let's look at one more picture, and then we'll stop.
I'm sorry if I'm dwelling on the same topic, but it's a question for Alice. You're talking about the sort of mission of the White House photo office as being to create a historical record, but you also said that the selection process involves somebody from the press office. And I mean, I've been looking at the Flickr account the whole administration, and I don't think I've seen a single unflattering picture or a picture of dissent of, say, a protester outside an Obama event, this type of thing that you would see from the news. So I guess I'm wondering, is that because those pictures don't exist within the president's bubble, or is it something to do with the selection process? Maybe you could talk about the logistics of it.
I think it exists. I think it's not there because it's because of the bubble. Because Pete Souza is in the bubble, and so the president doesn't see it, so Pete doesn't see it. And Pete has a kind of his vision for this office is that he wants, if there's another photographer on the trip, then that photographer should cover from the wire photographer or the pool spot. So, and as Stevens described, that's also a limited vantage point. So instead of having what might be interesting is to have the second or third photographer outside, and you know, we talked about this in the beginning. We said let's have the other photographers outside the bubble, but Pete's feeling is, no, this is the mission of this office is to cover the president. And so when you're covering the president, you don't see that outside stuff.
Hi, this is a question for Stephen. I was just wondering, you were talking about how it's really fast-paced when you're out there shooting, and what you bring with you in your bag, like what kind of equipment in your camera, and when you're going and you're fast-paced, what kind of lens, just a few technical.
I'm not a big gadget person at all, never have been, and I keep it simple, so I use whatever they send me, and right now I have 2 of these, and I haven't put on manual. I shoot everything on manual. I take this computer, and I use a 2470, a 7200, and I have a 16 something or other that I just started packing with me, and there are many times where I wish I had something longer than a 200, but I don't like to get my clothes wrinkled, thank you. And that's it. I just keep it really light, and it works for me. So.
Thank you.
And I have the knees to prove it at my age.
Or one of those.
Why don't we have a vote? Show all 4. Let's show.
Okay, raise your hands, which one you like.
Show of
And
hands.
We'll talk about it. This one, Rumpled Romney. It's hard to see this one, but this is a unusual peek at people going to a fundraiser, something you don't often see, and the milk and cookies on the Romney plane. Milk and cookies, anyone? Rich donors? Rumpled Romney? Okay, this is the one.
You're going easy, easy way out.
Michael, why don't you start?
Well, the reason I chose this picture is, I'm in love with Charles Darabak right now, but really, it's because, I mean, the most interesting aspect of this campaign to me this year is that this guy is like an enigma. You know, it's like, now we're going to find out who he is, and it's like, you know, there's one more week left, well, now we're going to find out who he is. There's something so enigmatic about Romney, or guarded, or, you know, there's a lot written about it. So this is a photo of Mitt and Ann, and they are on their way out to dinner, just the two of them. Just the two of them, right.
And the Secret Service and the photographers.
So I hesitate to say much more about it because I think it's fascinating. I mean, he looks heavier than I usually see him, and she looks a little frumpier, you know, than I think you usually see her. But you know, I'm actually curious to hear, you know, how people, you know, react to this.
Where was their iron? That's what I want to know. I mean, like, you just never see a candidate and his wife with, like, their clothes so wrinkled. It's, like, just not done, especially Romney, you know? It's like, okay, the top part of his shirt is starched.
They just look like rich people. You know, she's wearing this very rich-looking necklace, you know.
Yeah, when I looked, actually, I didn't even notice the rumpled clothes. I was noticing the necklace.
Oh, I just
It looks like
noticed
it's a
a
brand new
wrinkle.
shirt he's wearing. It's probably still, is the cardboard still on the collar?
Stephen, can I ask you a question? Do you feel like this, do you really feel that the access for the Obama, covering Obama is less than Bush?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So it's just what the pool gets to see?
Well, no, they've been opening up access lately. I mean, now, obviously, they're in campaign mode, so they're opening up access. But the access is, honestly, I don't think it's any better or worse than it's been for the last, you know, you catch them in the first 100 days and they're so confused, they'll practically let you have dinner with them. And then once they get through that first 100 days and everything, but that's, it's no better or worse than anywhere else. So the only when Bush in 2000 was a little more open on the campaign, but most of them just doesn't happen. And frankly, you have to be wary. I mean, it's true, Diana Walker and those people, they had relationships with, you know, they've been there a long time, but I really get suspect when people offer me stuff. Hey, you want a picture? I get a lot of that on Capitol Hill. So you have to make a decision. You're being used. What's this for? Blah blah blah. So,
Yeah, well, the week of healthcare, the healthcare passed. I was really surprised because it was incredible behind the scenes, and I thought, did anyone ask to be there? I mean, in the old days, somebody like Diana would have known this is going to happen. This is going to be great, and she would have had that relationship talking to the press.
It's. You know, between me, Doug, and Luke, like I said, I do surgical strikes on everything because I'm trying to piece together every aspect of it. So, but you know, the president hasn't done an interview with the New York Times in how long? I mean, a year?
He hasn't done a
2 years?
press conference.
Press conference. So why are they going to open it up to, you know? And I personally don't build that close a relationship. I like that they know I'm just the little fat guy running around, and they know I'm fair. I've been here a long time, and you know, that's how I get my day in the life once every president, you know.
It's not just about access, greater or lesser access, this administration versus the last one, but you have if you go back to the website, the Bush's website, and you look at the photo gallery, you just see like, oh my God, it was like impoverished. It looks like the 40s. Whereas at that time you thought, oh, I mean, it was Karl Rove. Karl Rove was brilliant at, you know, politics is TV with the sound off and framing. But if you look at just how much social media, for example, is now playing a role when it didn't with Bush. Now, so then the White House in this White House, bringing in a lot of those young people and being really savvy and that they're a publishing organization. So when you have that kind of access, you can go direct to the public, and in a way that has a ramification now because of the distribution channels that didn't exist.
But the Bush photo editors were like, would say to me, we had those same pictures. What's the big deal about what you guys are doing? We had the same pictures. They just never put them out.
Well, there's another thing, too, if you want to draw a contrast. Bush, and again, when you look at the pictures now, it's really strange how stilted they look. The photo of the night they launched the airstrike on Saddam Hussein and tried to kill the sons. And you look at the photo of the 5 guys in that room, and it's like, I'm pretty sure they took it afterwards because it's so staged. But
how many people are left in the room? Well, part of this is the style of photography by some of the people in the town that Stephen Crowley lives in. And, Stephen is an anomaly because he sees differently. And a lot of these guys see in this very constrained way. And Nina and I had been talking about that because I think that adds to this sense that they're contrived, that these images are contrived, because it's the way it's shot. And what's interesting is Chris's pictures of Bush that was part of the pool. He shot that from pool access. He would just kind of slip out and get yelled at by Secret Service and then say, hey, I didn't know what I was doing. But then come back, but it was all photographed from the pool position. And as his photo editor at the time, I encouraged it because for one thing, I knew that having worked with photographers covering the White House who went insane from the limitations and the constraints of that job, and I wanted Chris to like it. I wanted him to feel inspired. And once it was, we had this gallery show at the Mary Goldman Gallery in LA, it changed for him because he saw an art world look at his pictures in a different way. And it mobilized him to think about this and what he could do from that limited access. But he also had support from Time Magazine because it was his job. So, these pictures lived in the archive of Time Magazine, and I would use one here and there for our weekly story, but letting him create this project.
I just want to, it's 9:15, so I want to get 1 or 2 last questions, and then we'll call it a night. Are you the only one?
So I'm just going to take kind of a slightly meandering one. They'll go through a few photos, but I think this is essentially what you get when press access is cut down overall. It's just, any image of a candidate that doesn't look completely normal is cherished. I mean, frankly,
Right.
This is a really boring picture.
Yeah.
I don't really care to look at it, except, oh my God, Romney's shirt isn't ironed, so that makes it more interesting. And I think another element of that lack of access is what you see with the milk and cookie shot that you just passed over, or even the pictures of people coming in to see
To pay to see him.
yeah, to pay to see, and that's also really perpetuated a lot by Instagram. And now we have the Wire and the pool photographers with Instagram. And if you follow that, 90% of those photos are kind of just the experience of trying to take the picture and trying to find the picture and of other people finding the picture. And this kind of lack of access has led to this level where photographers are even, being more willing maybe to embrace the cheekiness of having a photo of someone, a black woman sweeping next to the chairs that say, "We built America." Because frankly, they weren't getting a chance to take a picture of the candidate, which maybe that would have pleased the editor more, but there wasn't an opportunity. There was no access to the candidate, so what's a photographer to do? They take pictures of the periphery more. Instagram is great for that, and these odd details, again, the milk and cookies, that's great for that. That's a more interesting picture now than an unironed shirt, but if you don't have any other picture of the candidate, that's what you have to run with.
Well, I'd kind of like to throw this out to you, and then maybe we'll call it a night here, is that, what did you have? I think a ratio of journalists to delegates at the convention's 4-1, all right?
I'm sorry, say that again.
That the ratio of journalists to delegates at the conventions, I think, was 4-1. 4 journalists for 1 delegate. Why do we cover this stuff? There's no story, really. What was the story out of the Republican convention? Clint Eastwood probably having a dementia attack. Okay, I mean, we made it funny, but I mean, there was clearly something, right? And the CNN black journalist who was victimized by racist slurs by people who we never found out who they actually were. I mean, to me, that was a story, like, who are these guys? Are they delegates? What? But I mean, in terms of what the candidates are saying, there's no story. So why do we continue as press covering this stuff? I mean, and I mean, Stephen, you've probably thought about this, maybe Alice, you've thought about this as a photo editor. We consistently go on the plane. We consistently go on the motorcade.
Because democracy would be far worse off if we weren't there.
No, but
because then we'd only have the road show that came into town, and you've got to look at how they're treating the elephants.
But what I'm also saying is, like, can't we cover the issues instead of the man?
We should do both, and
But we tend to cover the man, right?
Well,
And then you have this cult of personality. Then we have to talk about if his shirt is wrinkled or not, because it's all about the guy, right? But if he becomes president, he's part of a whole staff, a whole system, right? It's not just like what Romney does or what Obama does. I mean, it's all the people and the ideologies and the interests and the agendas behind him. So can't we find a more creative way to cover that? And I don't think anyone, I mean, and it's not a photographer's failure, right? Because we don't set the editorial agendas in the publications. I think it's an editorial failure from up above in the publications, is that they feel as though, well, if we're not there, maybe we'll miss something, right? Like when you had the creation of the White House pool, we have to be there in case someone takes a shot at the president, right? I mean, that's when it was started, wasn't it? And so I think, to me, that's really the crux of the question. You know, yeah, we can look at the pictures and see how photographers manage to maneuver this space and what they can say in the, you know, the little bubble that they're working in. But really, it's like, what kind of campaign do we want to see, and how do we want that covered? Yeah?
Is there any spontaneity really in any of these images? Like the cover picture is great because people sitting at the table seem surprised. And yet, it's a staged image really, I mean, they were made to wait while that was sort of being set up. So, are there any really spontaneous campaign photos anymore, or is it all really something where hopefully someone will look surprised and that's it? I mean, like, is there any spontaneity at all? Is anything unguarded anymore?
I think I just have to come back and say one thing, and that kind of triggers it, is that with Obama, I think that there's a very high degree of genuineness, and I think that there's also a very high degree of manipulation and staging and self-consciousness at the same time. Unself-consciousness and an amazing amount of calculation. And why is that? Because some of it's demographic, because in his age, he's grown up in this culture that's so sophisticated in terms of visuals and media, and just like all of us are so much more sophisticated about that. At the same time, you know, when you live with a photographer and you have someone like Callie Schell there, it's like, yes, you're completely natural, but you also know that, you know, you're running for president of the United States and you have to present. So in some way, what the presidency has turned into for me is like the Truman Show. It's like you can't tell the difference between what's natural and what's candid, because everything is in the whole way that Obama's portrayed is candid. but then how much of that is also like self-conscious? That's what's amazing right now, is I think it's both. It's weird. It's complicated.
You know, Stephen, you're the one who's there, so you would know better what's spontaneous. And do you feel like these are real moments, or do you think that the whole thing is?
Well, I didn't know the background of that hug picture until you're talking about it, but you're right. I mean, there are events. Everybody has a schedule. We all have a schedule. We were scheduled to be here tonight, and so.
And you look really good, I have to
very
say.
much. But there's stuff going on out here. You can read expressions on people's faces, and boredom and excitement and what have you. So, but that's really, you shoot your way into every situation. There's a story here tonight. If you're just going to focus on 5 people sitting at a microphone, well, that's boring. But if you look around, everybody has something to say or an emotion to express, or somebody stole my lens there, which is fine. So, because it's only digital. So, yeah, there's everything. Life is a performance. You walk into a hotel and it's the front desk and everybody in their uniforms, but down below are the maids and the cooks and the guy who orders the liquor and what have you. So it's all that support around what's going on there on stage. That's what that's what we should be looking for, and we should be dissecting. Look, you're going to see your future chief of staff. You're going to see somebody that might possibly be the next Secretary of Education. This is what's going on out on the road. You see donors. I want to go into the White House. How much access is there to all those pictures the White House photographers are taking? How many bundlers showed up at the state dinner for the Indian Prime Minister? Those are the pictures you want to get. Those are the things you're looking for. You don't just focus on the candidate. You focus on the whirling dervishes trying to distract you from. So yeah, we should be out there. God help us if we don't.
I think that's a good place to end it. I want to thank you all. Thank you for coming.